Is everybody in? Is everybody in? The show is about to begin.
Welcome to the podcast, conscience that made us. Interviews and stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down. The greatest live shows and that cheering crowd sound. It's concerts that made us, concertsthatmadeus.com.
Lucy, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you again. Now, it's been, I think, 2 years since we last spoke. How has life been?
Right. So I would have just released
Teen tapes.
Teen tapes, right? Gosh. Oh, it's a big question. Somebody asked me that even after a week of not having seen me. It's a big question. So 2 years is a long time. Yeah, many things. It's been a very busy year. We've been basically on tour the whole year, which is really nice, but also quite intense. And time definitely does a weird thing then, because sits a bit outside of time somehow. So yeah, I guess that's the most recent thing I can think of.
Right.
To answer that question.
Now, as well, since we last spoke, you released an album, Heaving, in 2023, and now you're back with another album, A Human Home. It's dropping on the 31st of May. What can you tell us about it?
So A Human Home was actually made before Heaving, which is something I haven't really done before. And I suppose because it wasn't necessarily made with an album in mind, it was made during lockdown. I mean, I keep, it's funny how I just listened to this podcast about memory and how it's formed. And the more that you repeat something, the more that you create the memory. And I do feel like sometimes, because this record was made a while ago, that the story of what it is and how it came to be is changing. As I tell it, I'm sort of rewriting. So it has this very clear narrative in my mind, but I wonder how much of it, because what I wanted to say was that it was written during lockdown, and I had quite a clear intention in mind, which was just to empower myself a little bit with creating. And so I was working properly for the first time with digital audio workstation, like a recording. And I suppose just learning a bit about how recording works for myself, about how production works, about how synthesizers work on a very basic level. But I guess all of this stuff is quite accessible, but also quite overwhelming because it's such a broad field and there's so much to know and so much to do and so much to explore. And I was feeling a bit overwhelmed by all of that. And so I decided I would just kind of set myself take myself to school a little bit. And I would do a tutorial in the morning on the recording software, and then I would write using whatever I had learned. But that coupled with, it was during lockdown, and so I can't remember if it was something that I wanted to do, and maybe lockdown just gave the kind of space to do that. But then I also decided that I would try to work with a bit of a concept. And so I asked friends and family to send me some of their experiences about isolation. And actually what I found was I got a bit panicked then, because I was like, I can't actually work with other people's thoughts or words, because so much of my music depends on my lyrical starting point. But what was nice to feel or to realize was that point, I guess, of like setting, or at least that that became something of that for me. When you set a framework, obviously it's, especially when you're working for yourself, it's your own rules, and so you can break them, but it's helpful sometimes to have a starting point. And so the combination of those elements then resulted in this collection of songs. But because, yeah, like I said, because it was quite, because I was quite clear with myself about not being too judgmental and not trying to not look too much from the outside in, and so not imagining like, oh, people are going to hear this and this is how they're going to perceive me as an artist. There was kind of a thing of going, it's like writing in a journal that you're going to throw away or something. But I don't know if it's narcissism or capitalism or I don't know what made me do it. I'm hoping that there's better intentions than that, but in the end, I wanted to share it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So I am sharing it, but it definitely feels a bit different to the others. Like it feels, I'm still figuring out. Yeah, it's put a little like existential pin in the process of releasing and thinking about why one does it. But I am doing it, so that's where I'm at with this record.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I have to ask, if it was made before Heaving, why is it being released now? Why was it not before Heaving?
Well, I mean, logistically, I received funding for Heaving to make a record, and so then there's very clear frameworks and timelines. Um, yeah, I guess that was probably the biggest reason. But actually, not because Heaving, even I'm busy working on a record now, and some of the songs. Actually, I was planning on making, when I got that funding, I was planning on making a different record, which is the record I'm making now. But then when I received the funding, I was told that I had to basically have it done within a few months. And um, I don't know why I didn't then release it then. I had this other collection of songs that I had been working on with a different concept in mind. And they were feeling a bit strange and also a bit brave. And I think I was actually happy for the excuse to be like, oh, well, I guess I'll have to release these. And that ended up being Heaving. And yeah, in a way, because I do think of Human Home a little bit as process work,
Hmm.
but almost like it's not B-sides because it's not. It's all, yeah. It's a little bit like a prologue to Heaving or something. No, no.
Right.
Where does a prologue come?
Prologue is first, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Right, right. And when it came to recording production, how did you approach that?
As an amateur.
Right.
Um, yeah, I guess the idea was to. I was thinking about this yesterday in a different context, but to discover through error, because there is, with the information that you have at this current moment, whether it is technical or emotional, or there's going to be something very specific you can make, just because that is, yeah, there is no other moment where those elements are going to be like that. And I think there is something, and yeah, there is something in the kind of naivety of like pre-knowledge or process knowledge that's, yeah, that I guess can be kind of cool and can only be in that moment. Um, and so, yeah, and I suppose maybe on a just getting to know myself a bit, trying to, I don't think I find it very interesting to learn in a very dry kind of manner. And so to actually immediately be putting whatever I learn into creative use, I think helped keep me interested and is actually a good thing to remind myself of now. Um, so yeah, there wasn't really the whole approach was to not necessarily have an approach, but just to, which is funny because in the end I think there is a kind of a sound, but um, yeah, initially it was just to really open, and a lot of it was on the digitally, so I guess just to open my computer and Logic and to play.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
and obviously it was lockdown, and so I had to be in my room, and so it was bedroom production, I guess.
right,
Yeah.
right. Is that something what you learned and we're putting into practice there? Is that something you're going to keep with you? Are you approaching the next record the same?
Yeah, I kind of it oscillates a bit. I'm a bit confused about this at the moment because yeah, there's something maybe what can be difficult is that I really like to create alone because I feel less afraid of I can get into my own process without being too judgmental. Um, but then there's something special in that initial moment of recording that's quite intimate. But obviously it's not always your first effort can be your best, but it can also just be a step. And so for this new record, I'm trying to let that be a step and for the band to kind of to really go back to the band. But I think what's difficult is that you have to then let go a little bit of the initial feeling because otherwise I think you can end up making a bad replica of an impulse that so that you capture something with the emotional quality, and so then you can attribute it to that exact sound or exactly the way that that's played, and then you try and mimic that, but you're missing the core of it. And so to actually like let go a little bit of that initial thing and to see what happens and to try find the next moment that is inspired by that moment. Um, I guess I don't know, for me, and I'm sure for many others, like there's a constant like fulcrum kind of swings between these things.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I'm trying to not be too precious, not to get stuck in the first moment. I mean, to let it be a first moment, and then to keep pushing the production a bit, I suppose.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I get you. I get you. When you look at the tracks on the record, then is there any specific ones that kind of have a special meaning for you or stick out?
Hmm. I have to think about the track listing now. Well, now I mean, they're all quite precious in a way, which also makes it difficult to be very sincerely critical of the process or the product rather. But because they all have some kind of seed of my connection with somebody else. Like even if I ended up writing the words, it was started by something. It had to include somebody else somewhere. Um, so actually, there's one song on the record that's, and I don't think I was supposed to say this, but I'm going to. Um, the last song on the record is called Golden Moon, and my partner Liu was living in Amsterdam, and she wrote me. It was really just a pretend poem, like it's kind of sweet, funny, um, and then I ended up using that to try write a song. Um, and something I think, yeah, even though it was a kind of a joke poem, there was a bit of something true in there. Um, and then the guitar is just quite like yeah, I don't know, something in the musical conversation back to that also, although it was silly, was somehow ended up being honest, and I think it's actually turned out to be something quite sincere that started off as like a masked uh, playfulness.
Yeah, yeah. How did they feel knowing you would put it into a song or turned it into a song?
Well, what actually happened, and this is also a funny question around consent, but because I didn't use anything that was directly sent for the project, I actually ended up using voice notes from friends around that time, which ended up being just feeling much more honest. Like I think sometimes when you speak directly to a situation, it's hard to feel something from it. Um, and so there's two songs, one called Rooms and one called The Whale Song, and then a couple of others where I also still use voice notes, but I steal voice notes from my closest friends. And yeah, I they didn't know, and I think they were quite surprised to hear themselves. And actually, my one of the singles includes my best friend's voice, and her partner sent me a message saying he's trying to articulate the experience of hearing his partner's voice in a song without expecting to But I think they're used to my ways, so they were okay with it.
Right,
I
right.
obviously checked with them first.
Yeah, yeah, you kind of have to, I suppose. And for fans of your music, what do you think will appeal to them about this record?
I have no idea if it will.
Right.
I don't know. I don't have an, this is a funny thing. Also, when I was thinking about releasing it, I was thinking maybe this is something that you do when you do have, that you actually only do at some point when you already have an extensive career and a huge listenership. And I can imagine for myself, if I really loved an artist and they were to release something like this, that would be very intriguing for me. I'm not sure if I mean, I'm not at that level, but I think you still do what you do as an artist. So I'm not really sure. I guess when I listen back to the record, when I listen back to the songs a little bit after having done it, or a little while after, so I left some distance, um, I listened back and I thought, yes, there's something there. And then I try to just stay with that, to not overthink that, to feel like, yes, there's something honest there and that's it. Um, yeah. So I'm not sure actually what
Okay,
they'll get from
okay.
it.
How has it been going down live then?
I don't think I'll do it live ever.
Really?
Yeah, because it's I made it. I mean, there's some small collaborative moments, and so like a friend did some percussion, a friend did some uh, guitars. Lee, my guitarist, obviously did quite a bit, but generally I made it all in my bedroom and not in a very songwritery way, like in a more collagey kind of way. But I don't know how much they'll translate live, and heaving is still very new in a way and was made with live in mind. And we're working on a new record, and I really want to. I know some people only record songs after they're done with the record, but for me, it's very good to feel as much as possible what they are live before recording them. And so there's just too many. Again, maybe if we were a much bigger band and we had big audiences, I would even do something like having two sets, and then I would. But it just doesn't make sense at this point.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Right, right. I have to ask something that's really coming across is it seems like you have like hundreds of song ideas or notes with songs. If you sat down right now to put all them together, how many albums would you get out of it?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess in the last years I have written a lot, and that is another question. It's hard for me to. I'm a little bit in the process now of going like, yeah, I guess wondering. I think something happened when I moved to Berlin. I felt so. I felt kind of internal pressure to really give myself over to this craft. And for me, that looked like writing. It can obviously look like a lot of other things. I could be working on my guitar playing, I could be working on, but somehow for me, it became a thing of writing. And I felt like what can happen in this, especially when you're not a well-known band. I don't know what the experience of well-known bands is, but for myself and what I see around me, it's quite hard work to keep it sustained. And so you can end up spending all your time on admin and trying to get things going and not actually on the process. And then it starts to feel, yeah, like you're not growing, and it just starts to feel like a bit of a farce. And so I just made it very clear to myself and tried to stick to it that I would have to be really involved in the writing process so that I would actually be an artist, and not. And so I think I got into a good habit, except that I guess what I don't do, which other artists do, and it's just maybe about approach, is that I don't think I spend as much time being very detailed in my crafting um, and I am wondering about what to do for the next record. I'm a bit on like I wonder if I'm going to pause for a moment and think about Or I don't know, maybe it's not necessary. I'm not sure. But I have a lot of songs, I guess.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
We won't have to worry about there being no more output anyway.
Well, let's see. I'm always terrified of it anyway, so who knows?
Here's an interesting one I just thought of. Since it's your second time on and it was 2022 when you were on the first time, if you could go back and speak to Lucy back then around the time of teen tapes, what would you say to her?
Hmm. I'm usually quite cynical, but I think I would have something. Maybe I could just say, I guess at that point, um, I was really trying to um, expand a little bit in terms of my, yeah, just not being so afraid to be so. I wanted to color out of the lines a bit in many ways, and I didn't really know how to do that, but I was somehow working on it in my mind, and I think that I did manage to go there. I mean, I think I still have a long way to go, but I think I did manage to go there a bit with heaving and prove to myself or show myself, I think that process is process and possible. Um, and I guess I would just say keep going.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I think, yeah, I think that was the last, it was the last record in the trilogy. And I guess again, this whole memory thing in hindsight. But if I do look back, I was really trying to like challenge myself or get myself to go somewhere a bit more, what's the word? Yeah, a little bit messier or a little bit with a little bit more depth or a little bit less fear. And I think, yeah, I don't know if that's the right, I don't know if I should give advice, but I'm sure, I guess I know by now that you don't really take it anyway. You have to just do the thing and figure it out for yourself.
True,
So I'm
true,
not sure I would
exactly.
have, I'm not sure I would have anything that I would have listened to.
Right, right. And Berlin, what's the scene like in Berlin now compared to back then? I'm sure it's bounced back to pre-lockdown days, has it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't been in Berlin so much this year because we've been
Oh, touring.
touring, and so it's strange. It's a strange. I've been thinking about that a lot. Where I haven't really been here. I was also in South Africa for 3 weeks now. I haven't been here and because we're away so much. When I'm back here, I hibernate a bit. And so in a way, I'm not really engaging with the city or the scene in a way that's probably advisable. Mostly because community matters, but so yeah, I guess I can't. I don't know if I can speak to that so well at the moment. Berlin is feeling a bit strange. Germany is feeling a bit strange, politically. But it's a bit confusing, actually. I went and saw a really nice show. I'll try to remember the name at Silent Green, and um, it was very beautiful. And I remembered how much there is here to engage with in terms of the artistic scene, and um, I felt very um, it felt very life affirming and very kind of it had my thoughts moving, which I was reminded a little bit about what the city can offer. But yeah, I guess I've been a bit out of touch actually.
Right. Makes sense, I suppose, when you're doing so much touring. Speaking of which, what have the gigs been like for you lately since we last spoke?
Yeah, good. I mean, I love playing live. I've really enjoyed. Yeah, I guess I was doing teen tapes then, but I've really enjoyed playing Heaving live, um, and felt and feeling what. Yeah, I guess it's been really fun to play a little bit with performance and um, to yeah. This is another thing. I don't know how much. It's hard to know how much one should um, consciously or intellectually feed into ideas around performance and how much one actually just has to do. But I guess the lucky thing about touring a lot is that you do have the chance to experiment and um, Yeah, that's been really, yeah, and like I say, maybe some of the thoughts that especially around heaving, I was really busy with ideas around, I suppose, the feminine voice in particular, and a lot of that, everything is quite interlinked, and so it also just um, fed some ideas to me around, yeah, how the female performer is perceived and how she experiences herself. And I don't know if I did anything. Yeah, I think I realized, which is very nice and frightening, that if you feed yourself with certain ideas or you take time to think, they do, and you allow them to, they do kind of trickle through into your physical experience. Yeah, it does feel like a time of like stretching and playing and disrupting my own um, norm, I suppose. So anyway, I guess the shows have been really nice and really empowering and interesting. Um, yeah.
Right, right. You recently played South by Southwest and New Colossus in New York as well. What was that like? You have to give us all the details. How did it come about? Everything.
I don't know how, yeah, it was a bit of a challenging experience for me. I mean, it was lovely to be invited to Dead Strange who do, no, who run New Colossus are great, um, and I was happy to have an opportunity to visit the States because it's a place that's, um, I guess, been so instrumental in so many of the writers and musicians that I listen to and who were fundamental to other artists that I listen to came from there. And so it was interesting to be there, but also a bit of a strange time to be there if you are conscious of what's happening in the world. And while I was in New York, there was information released about South by Southwest platforming weapons companies that were involved in supplying weapons to Israel, and that obviously disturbed me a lot. And the whole experience became quite. I guess I was really busy, really busy with just thinking about how we are in the world and who we engage with and the systems that we work within, how they contribute to the power or oppression of others. And I think that question and that reality really overwhelmed my experience. And so I didn't really, it wasn't really a musical experience in the end. And I'm still processing it a little bit, even knowing how to talk about it. Um, I don't have I have a lot of feelings, but I don't have, and they're so old and like historical and fed by others that I'm finding it a bit hard to figure it out. I know that's a bit of a chaotic answer, but I think that's the one I have.
Get it. I get it. Especially with South by Southwest. At the time, there was a couple of Irish artists as well that were booked to play, and then I think in the end they didn't. But with that hanging over your thoughts, how did you approach putting on your show and giving it the same energy you normally would?
Well, I mean, it's not very much to. It's not enough of a thing. I mean, we, for financial reasons and obligations, had to play. Otherwise, I would have been in an amount of debt that I can't really handle. Which is obviously, yeah, still a decision and still. But I mean, I had written um, a poem by a Palestinian author some months before, and we decided we would play that at the shows, which is not also a very small um, tribute, but I guess we didn't. We wanted to acknowledge the involvement and the situation. But yeah, it felt quite uneasy. Actually, it didn't. it was again just a bit confusing. If you think, what am I actually? Yeah, what am I doing, and what am I offering, and what am I? Who am I doing this for? Who am I? Yeah, it felt like a strange micro. I don't know. Yeah, everything felt extremely laden with symbolism, and it wasn't simple at all. It wasn't just what it was.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah,
completely understand.
but I was very
Yeah,
very I was also very impressed and envious of the Irish artists who were there, because I think almost most of them pulled out. And somebody that I know who works with an Irish artist, they, the artists that had got funding to be in South by Southwest were still going to receive that funding because of, I guess, the general stance of the Irish, which is pretty amazing, and also just shows you, because that is not the German view.
really.
No. Yeah. So yeah. Also, I guess very interesting, but interesting is a bit of a frustrating word when people are dying.
Very true. Very true. Yeah. And I suppose before we dive into the last couple of questions, then future plans. What can you tell us? Gigs? I suppose you obviously don't know when the next album is going to be out.
Yeah, probably soon. um, we're busy working on a new record, and we're kind of playing shows throughout the year, actually. Um, yeah, I suppose we're in a bit of a rhythm of playing live, and it's what I've wanted to do for a long time, to be able to get to a point where it's possible to. Um, so for now, that's what's happening. We're playing in the Netherlands this week, and then we have some festival shows in the summer, and then I think we'll do another tour at the end of the year, and so it continues.
Right, right. I know I've asked you this before, but what are the chances of getting you closer to this side of Europe?
Yeah, I really, really want to. I mean, that we do have a conceptual plan. It's just very difficult, again, from a visa perspective. It's very expensive, and also they don't always say yes, and so it's high risk. But I really, really want to, and I think it is a bit closer than it was the last time I spoke to you.
Right,
So, yeah.
right. We'll mark it down right here, right now. The next time we're talking, we'll be discussing the dates in Ireland and the UK.
That'll be nice.
Right, we'll dive into the last couple of questions. First off, what are you currently obsessed with? It can be anything at all.
An artist called Caroline Polachek.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I think she's amazing, and it's like it's not really music that I'm used to liking, and so I guess I'm finding it all. Yeah, yeah, she's amazing, but in a way that and not within a framework that I'm necessarily used to or something. Um, what else am I obsessed with? That's a very good question. I guess, yeah, the state of the world and what's happening in Palestine has been extremely present on my mind. Not so much an obsession as a deep, constant disturbance. Um, I'm always afraid of this question because I think sometimes I'm so single, I have such a single track mind. Um, yeah, I can't think of anything else.
Okay. Okay. The next one's a bit of a fun one. If you had a superpower, what would it be and how would you use it on stage?
I would somehow try to tune people's brains into specific frequencies that they would somehow feel. Yeah, I don't know what exactly what it would be, but there would be a moment of harmony that doesn't necessarily exclude dissonance, but allows people to really understand on a fundamental level that we share this planet with the planet and each other, and that there's a deep dependency and need for equality and empathy.
That is a perfect answer. I really like it. And the final one, what is your go?
It's just a more ridiculous way of saying world peace, actually.
Yeah, actually, it's more
But that,
complicated.
yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, yeah. And the final one, what is your go-to album? An album you constantly revisit?
Hmm. Yeah, there's been less of that in the last uh, years, I guess. I'm definitely finding in the last couple of years when I return to things that I used to be able to always return to, it feels a bit stuck or old. So I haven't been doing that so much lately. And actually, I guess I discovered this artist, Caroline Polachek, later than others. But her not the album, not her latest album, but the album before is called Pang. Um, yeah, for some reason, I suppose at the moment that's the one that I return to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I like it. Listen, Lucy, again, it's been a blast and an absolute pleasure. Thanks a million.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Speak to you when I'm in Ireland.
Welcome to the podcast, conscience that made us. Interviews and stories, tales from the bus. We love taking you back to when it all went down. The greatest live shows and the cheering crowd sound. It's concerts that made us, concerts that made us.com.